One of the things that Muslims have in common with each other uniformly is that they fail to understand the incarnation of Christ properly. And so here to clear that up, well, we all haven't cleared it up in our minds, right? But in order to give a good strategy to us, Luis Carlos Reyes is here to help with that. Thank you.
Dios les bendiga. ¿Cómo están todos ustedes hoy? Es un placer estar aquí hoy. Oh, wait, this is in English. All right, we do have some Spanish speakers. My name is Luis Carlos Reyes. Just a little bit about myself, because probably a lot of you don't know who I am. I have a Spanish-speaking ministry to cults and to pretty much any anti-Christian belief that's out there. And been doing this for about 35 years. So, yeah, kind of old. And when you deal with cults or religious beliefs or anything that's anti-Christ, you kind of run into a lot of similar criticisms from different religious beliefs. One common one is on the Incarnation. So you will see that a lot of the criticisms that one group gives or misunderstandings, another group will give as well. And this is the same thing with some of the criticisms that I've heard from Islam. And usually there's a lot of misunderstandings or not too sure of what they're criticizing. So one thing that I think is very important, my mission here, I see you guys have your timer up there. I always have my timer because I always go over. My mission here is to help prepare you to give responses and to deal with some of these issues. And the issue of the Incarnation is not an easy subject. It's a very tough subject. It's something that's discussed in seminaries and classes, and hopefully you can make the workshop later, because I'm going to go into detail. I'm going to have a chart and try to explain as best as we can some of the ideas that come with this, so that we can better explain and respond to people, especially in the Muslim world, when you hear a specific critique about the Incarnation. So real quickly, in the Quran 572-73, there's an explicit denial about, let me just read it to you. It says there, they have certainly disbelieved who say Allah is the Messiah, the Son of Mary, end quote. And the argument is there that the Quran explicitly condemns the identification of Jesus with God. As you guys know, those of you that have studied this. And then the implication is if the Quran is true, the true revelation, then Trinitarianism, which is what we are, is false by definition. The Incarnation and the doctrine of the Trinity, those are some very common areas where a lot of the criticism is received. And two, Jesus as the servant and the prophet in Quran 19:30, and I know they're divided in subsections, but it says here, I am the servant of Allah. He has given me the scripture and made me a prophet. Okay? So the argument is here that Jesus is portrayed as a prophet, as created, dependent servant. And this contradicts the Christian claim of ontological equality with God. So you can see where this is going at right here, okay? So my idea here is to look at this and look at it from a somewhat philosophical and logical perspective, because a lot of the times when we talk to people, as we know, the first thing they do is, well, I don't even accept what the Bible says, or maybe some portions of it because some of it's not correct. And so sometimes you have to deal with people just straight dialogue with logic or reason. This is just a tool that I'm giving you, something that you can use. Doesn't mean it has to be your primary tool, but it's one of your tools. As my profession, I'm a law enforcement officer here in California. I won't say what department, but as an officer, you're trained to handle pretty much any kind of situation. So we have a lot of tools, and we have the right tools for the right scenario. And you train to see, well, how am I going to respond to this? Okay, if this happens, then I have A. If A doesn't work, then I have B. If B, then I have C. So officers are always thinking ahead. They're always watching ahead. Same thing when you do apologetics. There's a lot of stuff that you pre-plan and that you think about. So today I'm focusing on this, on the incarnation, okay? So one of the problems, you look at the problem, what's the problem here? Well, one of the problems is that the incarnation is incoherent for a lot of Muslim people. And not only Muslims, but many other people. And the argument is something like this, okay? So you can get an idea here. The argument is a truly infinite being cannot assume finitude without contradiction. Those are kind of deep thoughts right there. If God is immutable, what does that mean? If he can't change. If he's always existing, he can't change. Then the argument is, well, he can't become a man. If God is omniscient, what does that mean? If he knows all things, then he cannot be limited in knowledge. If God is omnipotent, he's all powerful, then he cannot be crucified and die. So do you see where they're going? A lot of the criticism here is they're using what's called the law of non-contradiction, which is A cannot be non-A at the same time in the same sense. I cannot be here and not be here at the same time and in the same sense, because that's a contradiction. So they see that as a contradiction. So how do we respond to that, right? They're looking at it as a being cannot be fully God, infinite, impassible, immortal, and fully man, finite, passible, mortal, in the same respect and the same sense. Okay, well, you kind of understand. Okay, I see what you're saying. I'm listening to you. I'm considering what you're saying. And one thing we have to do as apologists, that's everyone that presents the gospel, that's the primary mission, right? Like the Pastor Steve said, that's the primary mission. Get to the cross. Dr. Delcourt said that too. Get to the cross. That's the primary mission. But sometimes when you are presenting the gospel, people place obstacles in front of the way. You hear objections. Well, I don't believe in the incarnation. How can, for example? So that's an obstacle. So I always, when I teach classes, I'll say, well, there's the cross. We're going to direct this person to that cross. Okay. So we're directing them, but then they put a roadblock in front of you. Well, wait a minute. How do I know the Bible's even true? That's a roadblock. Okay, so what's our job? That's when apologetics comes in. That's when we remove that roadblock. Okay, focus. Back on the cross. That's the mission. Oh, well, how can Jesus be God if he died and God cannot die? Roadblock. Apologetics. Apologetics is not a thing that we just do because we want to do. It's not your primary thing. That's your backup weapon, like you say over here at the department. That's your backup. Your primary goal is that. Get the problem solved. Get them to the cross. Okay. So this is one of the obstacles that appears when I talk to people. Not only Muslims, it's a lot of people. In Spanish, I'm researching a group right now called La Luz del Mundo. Have you guys heard of that group? The Light of the World? Well, they're all over the media right now because their leader just got arrested for all kinds of horrible crimes. It's all over the media. It's federally charged. He's on his way to New York along with his mother. It's a big cult here in Mexico. To them, their apostle is their leader. That's Jesus Christ here on earth, basically. You guys all see that. I did a couple of shootings for some major cable network where this is going to come out sometime in January. The reason I mention it is because a lot of the criticisms that I hear are the same things everywhere. I hear from Jehovah's Witnesses, which, by the way, I saw some outside when I came here, and I said, little mental note, I want to come over here. So these are criticisms that you're always going to see, okay? The way the Muslims see it, most of them is they have a concept called Tawhid, which refers to the core concept of Islam, emphasizing that God is one, indivisible, and has no parts or equals. This belief is the foundation of Islamic faith and practice. How many times do we hear them say God is one? Right? Okay, yeah, we agree. But see, there's a lot of semantics involved. There's a lot of disambiguation of things, of concepts. We believe God is one, but what does it mean? And sometimes you end up in long discussions, which I don't like to do personally. I don't like that either. I like to get straight to the point. But sometimes when we're presenting the gospel, it's going to happen. And Charlie Kirk used to do that a lot. we should all be doing that when it's necessary. Apologetics is not your primary weapon, it's your backup, okay? Okay, so the argument here is the doctrine of the Incarnation introduces composition in the divine nature, divine plus human, which violates divine simplicity, no parts, no change. For classical Muslims like Al-Ghazali and Averroes, philosophers, God must be absolutely simple and unchanging. So, for example, they'll say the dependency of Jesus, for example. They'll say, well, Jesus prays, doesn't he? Yeah. Didn't Jesus learn? Yeah. Doesn't he have a will distinct from the Father? Okay. Didn't Jesus suffer and die? Yes. Then he cannot be ontologically equal with God, who is independent, self-sufficient, and beyond suffering. Do you see where this is going? You see how there's something here that we need to explain. How do we reconcile this? All of this has to do with the doctrine of the hypostatic union. And this touches critically in the doctrine of the Incarnation. So there's some of those points there. I can't treat all of them, but I am going to treat one point, specific point, and that has to do with the temporal versus the eternal dilemma. Okay, the temporal versus the eternal dilemma. If you could later, if you want to join me in the workshop, I have a chart that I'm going to show you to try to get an understanding. And this is going to help you not only for discussing this with Muslims, hopefully it'll help you grow too, and just it'll leave you in awe, just wondering, wow, what just happened here? Who was Jesus? Jesus was just not your ordinary person. He was a heavyweight. I tell the guys, this when I'm testifying to people on the street and witnessing to people, I say, hey, man, this Jesus I'm talking about, yeah, this is the real deal. This is a heavyweight. Muhammad, Confucius, Zoroaster, everyone else is dead. Not this guy. This guy said, destroy this temple, and in 3 days I will raise it up. John chapter 2, verse 19 through 21. We say amen to that, right, guys? Okay. So temporal versus, I'm going to speak about the temporal versus eternal dilemma. It's this, okay? God is atemporal. What does that mean? He's pretty much outside of time. Okay, well, God is atemporal. And see, a lot of this relates to a lot of philosophy. Well, what is time? What kind of time? Things of that nature. But let's just try to keep it straight and simple. Jesus existed in time. Okay. Well, if Jesus began to exist in time via the conception, then he cannot be the eternal God, Mr. Christian. I'm talking the way they talk to me sometimes, right? So how can Jesus be God if God is eternal and Jesus began? So you see this? There's a lot of misconceptions. I see there's a lot of straw man fallacy that are committed here. A lot of misunderstandings when I hear criticism, especially from the Muslim world. They really don't understand what Christians believe. And based on that misunderstanding, many times, although there are some exceptions, they're misinformed on what we believe. Number one, on God, the doctrine of the Trinity. And number two, on who Jesus is and the doctrine of the Incarnation. Very common to see that. So they'll say something, if Jesus is co-eternal with the Father, how can he be born? So think in your mind right now, well, how would I answer that as a Christian? How would I respond to that? What's the best response I can give in the least amount of time to be the most efficient and to get the job done, get him back to the gospel, to the cross? We should think of these things before they happen. What I usually do is I have my mission. Okay, who am I talking to today? What group of people? Okay, so I have these subjects of the most important thing. For me, the primary concern is the gospel. That's it, get them to Jesus. Okay, so what's a good subject I can think of here? Okay, I can stay on this subject here. You're ready. What can they say? You prepare yourself. And this is one area that I've spent some time on. So I'm actually writing a book on the person of the Son of God. How many of you have heard of the Oneness Pentecostals? Oneness Pentecostals, okay. It's a whole different group in Spanish. I debated some of their leaders in Colombia, Mexico, different parts of the Spanish-speaking community. Do a lot of written debates as well. But they deny that Jesus Christ is the person of the Son of God. And they'll say, oh, no, we believe he's the Son of God. But what does that mean? Oh, son to them is just a body. Well, what about the person? So then you get into what's the difference between a body and a person. Okay, so there's a lot of things that overlap here. But pretty much everything that's consistently a misrepresentation across cultures and across different religious beliefs is on the doctrine of the Incarnation. Okay, so Muslims will say, well, God is by nature immutable, impassible, and eternal. Jesus was born, suffered, and died. Therefore, Jesus is not God. Their claim is that it is logically and metaphysically impossible, and those are two different types of possibility. A logical impossibility is, for example, the idea of a round triangle. A metaphysical impossibility is something, well, that can't even exist in the real world. Let's say I'll tell my son over there, hey, go take some measurements of a round triangle square over there, a field. What do you mean? Doesn't even make sense. It's not metaphysically impossible. Okay, so they're saying it's not metaphysically and logically possible for God to become man. The attributes of divinity, infinite, eternal, immutable, omniscient, impassible, are fundamentally incompatible with the attributes of humanity, which is finite, temporal, limited in knowledge, passible, we're able to suffer. Therefore, the claim that Jesus is both fully God and fully man is a contradiction. Do you guys see that? Do you see how they think this? Okay, so I've said enough of that. In the next class that I'm going to have, I'm going to respond to some of these, especially on the subject of time and eternity and how that relates to the doctrine of the Incarnation. And hopefully you'll have a better understanding of just what a great thing happened here. There's the idea of contingency and non-contingency, essential and not essential, the humanity and the divinity. We're going to talk a little bit about what a person is. Your body's not your person. I mean, if you lose your arm, that's not half your person. Hey, what you doing? Where am I at? No. There's something spiritual, immaterial, which has to do with our soul. If you guys haven't read the book by J.P. Moreland and Reyes, Scott Reyes, on body and soul, what a great book that is. A lot of good information in there, and it will really help us. Okay, so I'm going to wait for the next class to give you this information so I can go in detail. I'm going to stop here only because I have that already ready for the class over there. Okay, guys, and I hope to see you again. By the way, if you don't, I have a YouTube channel called Mopar 440HP, MOPAR 440HP. I sometimes do classes there in English and Spanish. Dr. Dalcour's been there. Professor Baber's been there, Greg, and many others. So I invite you to go ahead and subscribe to that channel. And I'll see you later, hopefully. God bless you guys.